Tony?
Okay, listen, Lonnie, these support samples are going to be amazing.
The show's about framing, so I figured I'd count all the 2x4s, 2x6, 2x8s, and even all the nails in this house.
You're going to be here forever. There are so many.
I'm almost done.
But he's right. Today's show is about framing. It's about framing materials. And to help us along, because this is a big subject, we have a special consultant, Tony, that's going to really help us out.
Okay, here's the problem, guys. Listen up. So, Lonnie told me about this special so-called framing consultant. The problem with me is he thinks we don't know much. Now, all of us and all of what we've done on our Between the Studs shows is education. We try to get education and show people how much we know. So, is there something that you can think of that would impress him about how much we know about framing and maybe studs?
Well, I finished the count, and I think he's going to be pretty impressed with this. So in this house, we got over 500 2x4s, so studs, and then we've got 120 2x6 and 2x8s, over 5,000 nails. Now, if we do some math here, we build 400 homes every year. That's over 200,000 studs and 2 million nails that we use every year.
Thank the Lord for nail guns.
Yes.
Wait, how many flat tires?
You don't want to know.
That's my question.
One thing that we can impress him with is how the lumber is harvested from Canada. We know from the time that they yell timber in the woods to the time that gets to the mill, and they use every square inch of that board that they can, and then they rail car it down to Home Lumber in New Haven, and then it gets to our job sites. We know how that entire process works, and he'll be impressed by that.
It's interesting that our studs are a soft wood. This is an evergreen tree, and it's a coniferous tree. Now, we also use hardwoods, which would be a deciduous tree. The difference between these two is the leaves. Some shed their leaves, and then also the structure of the tree. It doesn't necessarily describe the wood itself.
I think we could impress them with how we frame the roof type. So scoot on over there.
All right.
Let's look at these. This lovely picture that you hung up, these roof types. So you have different roofs like gable, hip, shed, gambrel, mansard roof types. And we can show them how we frame all those different roof types.
Now, I think we have quite a few lumber facts that we can impress them with as well. Did you know that aspirin has been made from willow bark from trees? So that is how we got aspirin. I think that's pretty cool there. One of the things is that trees have never died of old age. It's usually disease or being cut down or something like that. So it's never an old age with a tree. Some other fun facts are that balsa wood seems like it'd be a softwood, but it's a hardwood, and we have over 23,000 species of wood around the world.
Now, here's another fun fact for you. Did you know this? Did you know wet wood versus dry wood conducts electricity? So all I can say is, Tony D and Izzy, be careful when you're on a fence that has wood and it's electrified.
It happened one time.
Here's also another fact. Did you guys know that wood fuel is actually renewable? Now wait, you have to make sure that the forest is properly managed though.
Well, and as we're managing those forests and watching the trees grow upwards, not from the bottom. So the top of the tree continues to grow up. The bottom does not, stays the same, right, Lonnie?
So when you hang your birdhouse on your tree, say at 8 foot, years later it's going to be at 8 foot. It's the same on a telephone pole.
So the strange fact that I still find a little bit sketchy is that there's a discussion that trees can speak to one another. And the story comes from willow trees, that when insects begin to infest a certain area, that a willow tree will release chemicals into the air to notify the other willow trees so they can release more tannin, which helps fight off the infection of bugs.
I saw that on the Lord of the Rings.
Tree man.
Okay, guys, we need to get the show started. So let's get everything ready, and let's welcome that new guest.
Okay.
Great. Welcome to Between the Studs. We are Granite Ridge Builders, custom builders serving northern Indiana, northwest Ohio, and also parts of southern Michigan. We have been building custom homes for almost 2 decades, and we're really passionate about what we do. So join us today as we explore the processes, the trends, and also tips that characterize today's new home. Thanks for watching.
Welcome back. Today's show is all about framing and the materials we use, like wood studs. Last week, we talked about what we used on the exterior of a home to protect those studs and our framing. Today, what we'd like to do is talk a lot more in detail about framing, the materials we use, and how we use those to frame a new home.
And as we mentioned, today we have a special consultant that's going to help us with this show. But before we meet him, let's meet Teresa. Teresa Huber has worked with Granite Ridge for 21 years. She is sharp as a tack. By the way, she's my cousin. But she also helps us, especially with special financing that we offer to over 150 customers every year, allowing them to get into a brand new home at an interest rate as low as 1%.
It's really fulfilling to be able to help a buyer obtain a Granite Ridge home, a new home, worth $300,000 to $377,600, and a monthly payment from between $1,200 and $1,500 per month.
Yeah, we're talking about brand new homes, 3-bedroom ranches, 4-bedroom ranches, 4-bedroom, 2 stories, anywhere from 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 1,800 square feet on your lot that you get to choose and design.
That's impossible. No, Hank, it isn't. Actually, we do it every day.
Well, hey, Teresa, why don't you take a moment and introduce your friend who's our consultant today?
Well, this is Hank, the builder consultant, and Hank and I have been working together for nearly 50 years.
It looks pretty good.
Well, that sounds impossible. But Hank, let's be serious. You really think you can help us with today's show?
I absolutely do. After all, I'm the real stud. I'm not a pretend TV stud like you guys.
Hank, that's not very nice.
I know, well, it's true.
Well, but I think you must be a little bit nervous today.
Why would Hank be nervous?
Well, I think he knows this group has potential to be very smart and you might not need his help.
Well, hey, I'm not worried anymore.
You're not worried anymore?
No. Just look at them. They don't look very smart.
Hey,
You, they're talking about you, not us.
don't say that out loud.
It's okay. They won't understand.
Hank, I personally feel like we do a pretty good job on this show.
No, I don't think so.
Oh, I think they do. They have a really good show.
Have you ever seen the show with Elizabeth and all the bloopers she has? She says,
And my dad always said the detail. What'd he say? The little details matter the most.
And Lonnie, you and Izzy are always talking like Porky Pig.
But we also can make you.
Yeah, it's true. Everything he says is true. Meal, that's all, folks. That's a little disgusting, but Hank, let me tell you something. I think it's you who's the real dummy.
I'm not a real dummy. You are. Framing is all about wood, and I know a lot about wood. After all, I'm a real stud. Why don't you test me?
Okay, Hank, one of the things that I love about using wooden studs is you can cut holes in them to run electrical wiring.
That is right. It's especially easy since we run approximately 1 mile of wire in a new home.
Wow.
Hey, Tony, here's a stud tip. Don't leave those wires live. You might be shocked.
One time.
Hey, Hank, we like to do 12-inch overhangs, but we love to do 16-inch overhangs. What do you think about that?
I love the 16-inch overhangs. With the in-fly rafter, you can do a 16-inch overhang without any structural issues.
Okay, Hank, we love gables, and when we have 2 gables intersect, we use a valley rafter. How does that not leak?
Well, I would double up on your shingles and add an extra layer of ice and water shield.
When studs are pretty expensive, especially ones like you, but you know prices have come down lately.
Well, that is true. I saw you and Kayla dumpster diving the other day. That is so embarrassing. And very stinky, too.
Well, maybe you could help me out with this question about the communication between trees. Can you guys really communicate one from another?
Yes, that's true, and I guess it's no different than you talking to a dummy. And hey, Izzy, by the way, a megabyte is not a good day of fishing.
Hank, most of our 2x4 and 2x6 studs are made of yellow pine. Where do we get those from?
Typically, they come from the Canadian forest, and then they're shipped to us on a rail car.
So Hank, tell us, what kind of wood are you?
Well, I'm the red oak, which is much more dense and harder than pine.
I understand the dense side of it. And then also the red oak. Okay, so you are a redneck.
Well, wait a minute. If we're related, then you're a redneck, too.
No.
Hank, Lonnie is not a redneck.
Yes, he is. Why, his family thinks that hunting's a religion. And then they wear their camouflage to church. Who does that? And then he thinks passing the buck means having seconds for dinner. And Lonnie, fast food is not hitting a deer at 65 miles an hour.
Been there, done that.
4 times.
Now, come on, Hank, you know we're related.
Yeah, I know, and you're not the brightest dick in the dickyard either.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, you think old Yeller's your tooth.
Now, listen, you're not a real stud. You are part OSB.
Did you just call me an SOB?
No, I didn't. I don't use that word.
That's true.
Where? Where did you hear that?
Well, I heard it from Lonnie.
Lonnie said that word?
Yeah, he said he works with a lot of SOBs.
Wait a minute, Hank. Lonnie said he works with a lot of OSB, oriented strand board.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, Lonnie.
Okay, hey, Hank, we got to get started though with this segment. But first, after you've met us all, could you give us actually some real constructive criticism after you know us?
Well, I am a little bit concerned. I feel like you all might have a drinking problem.
Whoa.
Hank, why would you say that?
It's because of you. Me? Yeah, you said the caster between the studs are such whiners. You said if you put them all in your basement, you could have your own wine cellar.
Why would you say that, Hank?
Well, think about this. When you guys are staging a show, Lonnie, Izzy, and Tony, they're in the truck loaded. And Mike and Luke, they're always hungover something. And then Charity and Elizabeth, you're always asking for a screwdriver.
Okay, enough of this. We've got to start our segments. Let's get real serious here. But I think, Hank, thank you, for being with us. But we got to close with him in a second. So watch these and see what you think of these segments. All right, let's go.
How much are we paying this consultant?
Right.
I need a moment.
So here today we're going to be looking into the floor framing, which is typically what we're going to see if you're on top of a basement or if you're on the second floor of a house. And so the parts that we're going to be looking into are things like the support beams, the posts, the floor joists, and the decking.
Right, and as a sequence of the house being built, this is the first framing that gets put out there on the job site. You'll see a lot of the I-joists, the large beams, the OSB, everything dropped off, and then it all gets put down into the basement, and when it's all said and done, you just got a nice flat surface that we can frame up from. But one of the things that I love about the framing of the basement is long gone are the days where it was more of a cellar. Right, yeah. And now people are using it as a finished space, and they want wide open, large spans with no breaks. So we have a lot of extra parts and pieces we have to put in to make sure we can span those.
Yeah, and the materials have changed drastically over the years.
So when you talk about those two materials, so what I got here in my right hand and what you're holding, this is kind of more, I guess, the more dated way of doing it. More of a traditional 2x something, 2x12, 2x8, 2x10. But they could only span about 12 to 14 feet. Now we're using I-joists. The other big difference, before I put this down, that's the largest hole we were able to drill through this. So you couldn't pass HVAC through that. Now with this, we can drill that whole web out, and I'm gonna break this into pieces. So this I-joist, you can see from here, it looks like an I. Then we've got the top chord, the bottom chord. One thing that's nice is this is twice as wide as that dimensional lumber. So our OSB has more gluing surface, more nailing surface, and it just has more to rest on.
Yeah.
But then the center is made out of this OSB. That's called the web. And again, this allows us to span, technically we're allowed to span about 20 feet, but Granite Ridge we say 18 feet because we do not want that floor to be spongy at all under your feet.
Yeah, but to say less cracks and squeaks from the floor when you've got this kind of material too.
Right, so those are your typical joists that span across, but again, we want to make sure we have wide open spaces with the fewest amount of posts that are supporting some of that weight. So sometimes you'll see big beams underneath there. This is a glue lamb that I'm holding. You can see several 2x4s glued together. That's an LVL. Several layers of laminated veneer lumber that's glued together. This allows some of those to rest on this, which act as giant headers, kind of like our windows, and then takes that load over to an outside wall. So we're able to get that large open space that people are looking for. Now, Izzy, you're holding a steel I-beam and you're getting your workout with that. I know that people can't tell, you're making it look easy, but that is a very heavy piece of framing member. We try not to use those because of the weight, but occasionally, again, to try to get that span, we have to throw a steel I-beam in there. Now, on top of all that is the last, I guess, like framing member of the basement, and that's going to be that subfloor piece.
Yeah, and that's going to be 3 1/4 OSB is what we're using for that. Tongue and groove, so that groove right there is going to work together to make sure it's even more supported on those joints. And we also have that 200-day no sand guarantee, which basically means that while it's being constructed, Mother Nature comes through and rains on it. That 200-day no sand guarantee is going to make sure that we're not going to see warping and things like that, and the flooring can come through afterwards and keep it nice and flat.
Yeah, and this is such a critical part because it's not only the ceiling for your basement, you want to have the least amount of drops in there as possible, but it's also that first floor, and then everything gets built up off of that. So that's why we have to make sure this is done properly and in a timely manner.
Again, Granite Ridge has always worked to make sure we use the best materials for you. Come to us, let us try to make sure we put all those things together to make you have the perfect floor over the basement or on the second floor.
Tony, we've got the most important segment because it's all about the walls. If you didn't have walls, you wouldn't need a roof.
And if you didn't have a roof, you wouldn't have a home.
Exactly. So let's break down wall assembly standing right here, beginning with the sole plate.
Now, the sole plate is really interesting because before they even think about putting it down onto the foundation, they are going to soak that into a borate, and that helps make sure that we don't get bugs and infestation going into the house.
Also makes it more water resistant.
Yes, it does. And then we have that sill sealer.
Right. That's a foamy stuff that's underneath that sole plate, right?
And then we caulk it.
2 times.
And we caulk it again.
Wow.
And that's how we get it all put down onto the foundation of the home to start our walls.
Right. And speaking of walls, we typically frame with 2x4s, 16 inches on center. But another option is 2x6s.
Yes, we can always do 2x6s. Some people prefer it. Sometimes it's needed for a wall height reason that they need to go a little more structural with that.
And sometimes 16 inches or even sometimes 24 inches on center.
And when most people look at it, this is what people think of when they think about studs. They think about this common stud that happens, but there's a lot more than that, especially around the windows.
Right, and by the way, studs come in 2 varieties, a standard stud and then also a finger jointed stud. At Granite Ridge, we've used both over the years.
And underneath those windows, we use what they call a cripple stud.
Right, we have cripple studs, and then a window is framed around on top of that cripple stud, kind of the plate you might say. And then on each side of the window are
trimmer studs.
Why are they called trimmer studs?
Trimmer studs is because that's what the trimmer plants his trim into to make sure that we have that beautiful look around all the windows.
And then also above a window or above a door is a header. And at Granite Ridge Builders, we use insulated headers. That's really important. If you don't, oftentimes you'll get sweating and moisture over the top of your door or window.
And on top of the insulated header is the top plate.
Top plate and then a double plate. This makes up the primary wall in a new home at Granite Ridge Builders.
Yeah, ceiling framing is one of my favorite because it does offer a lot of flexibility because literally it's the space that breaks the first or second floor between that and the attic. So we do have a lot of that attic space that we can play with to create very different visually striking ceiling.
There are lots of different, very pretty ceilings that you can have. I want to talk about those, but give me some of the mechanical, like the hard parts that I don't necessarily understand behind that.
Right, so since the show is obviously about framing, let's talk about the framing of that ceiling. So when we look above our head, you're going to see a lot of what we call joists. Those are ceiling joists. We get into the framing a little bit later of the roof, but the ceiling joist is, again, what creates that space between the first floor and, in this case, the attic. And those ceiling joists, depending on how far we're spanning and what kind of load that they're bearing down, could be 2x6, 2x8, could even be something like an LVL or a glue lamb.
And that's going to change if you have a ranch home or if you have that 2-story home, right?
Right. So as you can kind of see behind us, we have what's example here of a cathedral ceiling, right? So we've got these 2 ceiling joists coming together at a peak, right, which kind of creating this more vaulted type look. But when I say that word vaulted means slightly different. Vaulted is going to be one slope continuous all the way through, whereas this one, again, has those 2 slopes. So that gives us, again, a lot of head height, which might make a smaller great room feel much larger.
And there are so many choices. So you can have a cathedral ceiling like this. You could have a box ceiling, like a tray ceiling. It could have 4 sides. It could have 5 sides. You could have my favorite ceiling, the coffered ceiling.
Ooh. Now, coffered ceiling kind of looks more like what I call like a tic-tac-toe pattern, right?
Yes.
So, but my favorite is the barrel vault, right? That has a lot of extra framing and it's got a curve to it. It takes a lot of extra time, but when it's done, done. It looks so good.
Well, at Granite Ridge Builders, we know how to do that ceiling framing because it is more about what it looks like. It is important to have the right framing behind the pretty too.
All right, Elizabeth, we came inside this house here, just got framed and the sheeting got put on the top. So we're talking about the most important part of framing really is the roof framing.
And we are so lucky in our area because Granite Ridge Builders homes are all custom framed. So none of this is brought in on a truck and just assembled. It's all assembled right on site. Now, the second most important part about the roof framing is the streetscaping. So we can take a basic roof or a basic shape and make it look really special with just additions such as gables.
All right, we're going to dive in and start describing all of the roof framing members that are used in all of our houses. So first things first, we'll talk about the joists. Now the joists are spans that run from wall to wall. These boards will actually support the ceiling where the drywall will be hung, either above or below the floor, so you can have it on multiple floors there.
Next is the rafters. This is an essential part of traditional framing for roofs extending from the ridge or hip to the wall plate, eave, or downslope perimeter. They help support the shingles, roof deck, and more.
Now, next is the ridge board. The ridge board is the highest point in the house. All of your rafters are actually going to tie into that ridge board, and then it provides structural stability for the roof.
And then the collar tie. It's a tension tie in the upper third of opposing gable rafters that's intended to resist rafter separation from the ridge beam.
Now, next thing, Elizabeth, there's a couple of different types of rafters that are in each house. So the first one would be the common rafter. Now that's going to run from the top plate all the way up to the ridge board. It's going to be a full span for the angle of the roof.
And then we have the valley rafter. This is where two gables are going to intersect to create a valley. Now there's two basic ways that we design your roof system at Granite Ridge Builders. You either have a gable roof or a hip roof. So your gable roof system is going to have two slopes to it. A lot of times your roof will look a little bit higher and your house might look a little bit bigger when you do the gable roof system. The hip roof is going to have three sides, and your sides are going to be, we would call sucked in on the side. And around Fort Wayne, you see a little bit of both of these styles.
Yeah, like you said, Elizabeth, those are the two most common, but at Granite Ridge Builders, we can build anything that you dream. So we're seeing a lot of shed roofs starting to make their way into our area, and those are going to be your single slope roof that we're seeing in modern houses a little bit more.
An architectural style is really all about the roof shape and style. So for example, a gambrel roof, typically you see it more on a barn or maybe up in the New England area.
Yeah, and they frame those so that way you have more inside space. That's why they build them on barns like that, so that way you can get more hay in that roof. You're also going to see accents on some of our typical roofs. You'll see dormers on top of these gable roofs as well.
Yeah, for example, we build a lot of homes that maybe have 2 gables, maybe up to 5 or 6 gables on the front of the home. And when it comes to your roof system, there's also small details you can add to that home, such as a clipped gable, or it's also called a jerkin head. We also do a lot of Dutch gables. So these are nice accents maybe above garage doors to break up that mass and proportion of your home.
So you can get really fancy with some of your architectural styles that you're seeing as well. You know, you'll see those mansard styles that come from the Second Empire, steep pitch like on your Gothic style homes as well.
So there's so many shapes and styles you can do to really add character to your next home.
On the subject of framing, I really enjoy stair framing. So there's several things to talk about to make these stairs happen on a functional level.
Yeah, so let's start with some of the terminology, the parts and pieces with it. And one that kind of gets overlooked is what's literally called the stair well, right? That's the hole that we put in between the 2 floors in order to make room for the actual staircase. We can really see that before we get a house framed when it has a basement. You can really see that well, and it can range in size depending on what type of stair we're putting in. It might be a straight flight stair or maybe more of a dogleg stair.
Now there's several different things that we need to keep in mind when we talk about the stair riser and tread. So the riser is going to be the vertical member and the tread is going to be what you step on. Now there's codes and requirements to how deep, how tall those can be, and it really does depend on your ceiling height and how much room you have in your floor plan on what dictates all of those members.
Yeah, and those risers and treads get cut out of what's called a stringer, or sometimes called a carriage. And that's actually cut out of a 2x12, which I'm holding here, and they'll get notched out. The framer will notch that out. We found the deeper that tread, again, you're going to feel like you're on more substantial ground as you're walking down or up.
Now, the most common question I get every single time our home is framed, especially when there's an open area of stairs, why am I stepping on something that's really small, and is that going to get fixed before? Because I don't want to be stepping on one little piece and it's open, and so it's a little scary at first in frame stage, but how do we go about and make it finished and how people are normally used to walking on it?
Right, there really are two main trades that are responsible for the stairs. The framers, which we've already really talked about. Now what you're getting into is the trim carpenter. So the trim carpenter will come after it's been framed, and they'll put in some of those finished pieces, and one of those would be a finished tread that may be out of oak, maybe out of poplar, could be lots of different things. And with that tread, we always make sure that there's a little bit of an overhang, so we have a bull nose on that, which again is better, we feel better than what's called a waterfall, which I have a waterfall in my old house, and again, you just always felt like you were about ready to trip down that stairs.
So as you can see, when it comes to stairs, there are so many important framing members to consider, and it really can be a fun topic during the frame stage of your home.
Hey, great show today, guys. Hopefully the audience found this fun, educational. We did. And again, special thanks to Teresa and Hank. Thanks.
Hank, I thought that was good. What did you learn today?
Oh, I learned a lot of things.
Like what?
Well, I learned these TV studs and studettes really are pretty smart.
They are smart. And anything else?
Well, all those framing turns, they're just like rolling around in my head, and I put together a little song.
Ooh. A song about framing?
Yeah, I'd like to sing it for you if I could.
Oh, I didn't know that you could sing.
Well, sure I can. I just have to warm up my vocal cords first.
Okay, you go ahead.
Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do.
Goodness.
That's enough to make anybody's hat fall off. Yeah.
Oh, okay, I'm a little worried now, but why don't you go ahead and sing?
All right, here we go. The sole plate connected to the common stud connected to the sill plate connected to the trailer stud connected to the header connected to the top plate connected to the double plate connected to the common raptor connected to the ridge thwart, and the ridge thwart connected to the shingles, and the shingles connected to the weather lake.
Okay, there we go.
And then the big bad wolf came along and he couldn't blow it down. It was a Granite Ridge home.
That's right.
Thank you, Hank. I guess you can sing a little bit.
Wow, that was really, really amazing. And again, a special thanks. Kayla, it's getting late. Would you close for us?
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for joining us today. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about who we are, what we do, and why we do what we do so well, please pick up the phone and give us a call. Visit our website, or even better yet, come in our front door. We would love to talk to you all about framing your new home.
That's awesome.
Amazing.
And they can always come and talk to Hank, too.
Sure.
Great job. Thanks. That was fantastic.
That's true. And so when you hang your tree house on the tree at 8 foot, years and years later,
your birdhouse.
Well, that's true too.
I'm sorry. Okay. Oh, it's a little disgusting, but Frank.
Hold on, Elizabeth didn't have her pictures back.
But frankly.
But Hank.
So got to be a little disgusted. I'm just like, okay, now come on. Charity, you might have to be able to, wait. That's awful.
There's Porky
the Porky
Pig.
Pig.
Meal, that's all, folks.
When the Porky Pig comes out.